Welcome everyone to another Coaching and Flourish Q&A. I'm your host, John Andrew Williams. We're here with Raj Anderson. Raj, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Although I was just chatting to John about, still can't believe we're in September. Time seems to be moving quickly. Either I'm having lots of fun. I don't know. What do you think, John?
Yeah, a bit of both. I think, for me, this year has been a lot about moving a lot of projects forward. And the last month and a half has been a pretty big pivot away from some pretty substantial projects that we've been working on for months. And now they're coming to a conclusion. So it's exciting to see a lot of the work that we had been doing come to fruition, and then all the things that we'll get to there, those things are now coming into forward focus. And so I'm really excited about it. So it's interesting, like, to feel like the arc of the year sort of mimic the arc of the seasons, where it's like, all right, like now it's harvest, it's going to be harvest time, but then there's a whole new crop of projects that we're going to be moving into production.
What exciting thing should be looking out for from coach
Not
training?
saying yet, nothing yet.
Not
No
revealing
hints.
anything.
No hints until we're still working out. Well, what's fun now too is, like, what we're doing a lot of now is there's a lot of we'll call it tentative steps. Like we're putting together something and sharing it. Maybe making like a 5-minute video clip and saying, okay, is this thing compelling? What's useful about it? Not useful. Where can we use this? And like, for instance, we're obviously about creating coaching demos and putting little parts of those coaching demos public on YouTube. But then we started making those and realized, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep them private for the students who are in the coach training program. And there's a reason why there's not a lot of coaching demos on YouTube. So that's just an example of a project that we had. We put on there, made a little test for it, and we decided, nah, we're just going to in-house only, everyone. So there's a reason why there's not a lot of coaching demos on YouTube, and now I realize why. Just stuff like that. And I'm just trying to figure out where we put the materials that we have been creating in the last couple of weeks. Where do they fit best? I'm psyched. I feel like it's an exciting time to be able to connect with people and really share insights like this, like doing this Q&A. This is lovely, and I feel like we found a spot for it. Yeah, I'll leave it
And
at
this
that.
is normally a great time of year, isn't it? People start new programs and things. And I think there's new programs starting with coach training EDU after the summer. People are away, and
Mm-hmm.
I know I get inquiries at this time of year. Should people be looking out for new courses and programs?
Not yet. We just added an essential, which is uh, so that's been in the works, and we have a relationship coaching course coming up too. But I feel like what's happening now, it's more of a refinement of what is rather than a creation of completely new. So, and that's always an exciting place to be. And I feel like, there's a refining stage that I'm really yearning for. That, it just feels really solid. I'm really happy with it.
So before we go into the first question, John, I'm just curious, what have you learned through kind of the refinement process over the years?
Yeah, it's in launching an organization, and starting something like this. I often think back to those days, like when I was still teaching, and this idea of creating, like, I had a plan, the idea of a plan of, I will, get coach trained, work with students, also work with executives, put together a program specifically for students using the insights from executives. And then I remember the 4-part plan of thinking to myself, is it really viable? Like, can I be a financially successful coach? And then the question is, well, if I can do that, then can I train other people to do that? If I can do that, then can I create an organization that's sustainable in doing that? And then can we scale it? Can we eventually, help other coaches create, financially sustainable businesses? And if we can do that, then it's just a matter of time before coaching on a large scale gets adopted into society in some way. And it's remarkable to see a plan like that in your mid 20s to like, really, map it out. Like I mean, I wish I had the piece of paper where I wrote this down on. And there's a chance, I mean, it's probably I mean, it could be in there somewhere. But to have this mapped out and then to really just do it, it's taken over a decade. I mean, it's taken a long time to see this through. And yeah, I mean, it's been my life's work. But to see it, to get to stage 4 and realize, okay, now I have the opportunity to polish everything, to make everything the way I wish it could have been in day 1. But it's taken, 15, 18 years to get it to a point where I'm like, yeah, this is good. And the patience, the perseverance. One thing I think about a lot is if I'm persisting, as long as I'm persistent, I'm going to be successful. And that's what I think about a lot is this, resilience. For me, it's, somewhere between determination and resilience. The word that sticks out in my mind is persistent. Can I persistently put in effort on this? And if the answer is yes, we're going to be okay. If the answer is not, then I got to take a couple steps back, maybe take a bike ride or, I don't know, do something, but find that place again and find that motivation. Yeah, as long as you're persisting, you're going to be successful.
So it's been a journey, and I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs and twists and turns. So I think you're probably really suited to help us answer this question. Then we're talking about persistence. And somebody asked the question, how can new coaches best deal with rejection when seeking new clients?
I remember those days quite well. And I remember the pain of that. I remember the stress of that. It was financially stressful for about 4 or 5 years. And really stressful for about 2 years. And I think there has to be a habit around meaningful action steps. And there's, when I was doing it, I got rejected a lot, and a lot of times people would, I was giving workshops or networking events or whatever, people's comments were garbage. Like they just, mean, who are you to, think that you can understand someone's like, core motivation characteristics. Like, how does this even helpful? Like, this feels like, counseling to me, if you're talking about emotion, but you're not a trained counselor, the gamut of, comments. And I had a system when I gave a workshop where I would divide, I would hand out like little feedback forms about halfway through, let's say, workshops. And I've asked for them back. So it's maybe take 5-10 minutes for them to, fill out their stuff and then hand it back to me. And I had a system where I would divide them into thirds. I would take the third that were really positive, like, hey, call me. Like, I want to work with you, or I want you to work with my son or daughter. Or the people who were in the middle, like, neither positive or negative, just sort of there. Then the third that was like, outright mean or said things or, I even did a sample training class. I had to fill in for a sample training class for Coach Training EDU. And I was doing that. And then I got a really mean feedback form from sample training class. So just like 2 weeks ago, right? Like, I did this thing and and I chuckle. I mean, now I laugh at it. I'm like, oh, this is funny. Like, I know, they're anonymous, but I'm pretty sure I know who it was. But anyway, it's just, so those things, the ones that are mean, I think you have to build up a way to smile at them and to also put yourself in a position where you're getting the good ones too. The ones who are like, this is amazing. Thank you so much. Like, the ones that are filled with gratitude, like, thank you so much for putting this together. Because it's like, it's so much work and energy for us to put on one sample training class. And we don't know these people. They don't know us really. And one person can come in and ruin a whole sample training class by just being mean on it. And it's a degree of selfishness. It's a degree of entitlement. It's a degree of, someone not being aware of their impact, that is like, look, if this is the case, we know for sure it's not a great fit, fine, but don't ruin it for everyone else. And I feel like that's a really useful perspective, is to know that there are people who are going to come in and try to ruin it for everyone else. And so our job as coaches is try to keep them over there, keep them, thank you, and then just make sure though that you have the balance point of you're continuing to do the action steps that are necessary to put yourself in a position where you can get the good ones. You can find your people. And you really, truly, as a coach, you can work with at most 40 people. That's it. Your job is to find 40 people out of all the people in the world. I mean, you go out, post-pandemic, you go to an airport or wherever. You go to just a gathering, a concert or something, and you think to yourself, I could only work with 40 people, or a conference. That's not that many. That's very few. So if your job is to find and work with only 40 people, go find your people.
Thank you, John. And I love what you're sharing about seeking feedback. And also it takes practice, doesn't it, to have that self-belief and know that, there are always going to be some people. I always like to say, I sometimes caveat at the beginning of sessions. I'm like, I know I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And then I make a joke. I'm like, I know it's hard to believe I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I think it's being able to laugh at yourself as well, isn't it? And know that, you're not going to get everyone. But it's a practice as well, isn't it? I think sometimes as human beings, we can focus on that one or two that rejected or didn't give great feedback. And as you said, overlook all of those people that saying, wow.
Absolutely. And two, if the feedback you're getting, let's say it's, two, I had some guidelines around it. Another guideline, I'm remembering now because it's been a while, but this is bringing it back. One guideline I have was, if the person did not write their name on it and said something mean, I would immediately toss it. If there's no name and it starts mean, I toss it. I did not read the rest. Or I saved it in a pile and had someone else read it and say, hey, is there anything I really need to know in this? Or is this just garbage? Or, recycling. Should we recycle this and put that back out there? Or, what are we going to do with this thing? That's a helpful thing, is to have a feedback buddy, someone who can filter the negative feedback. And if it's consistent and said, look, like the slide, I remember there was one feedback form, it's pretty early in my career, where someone said, look, I did not appreciate being called guys, like where you called us guys like 20 times in the course of an hour. Don't do that again. That's useful. That's a helpful, useful thing. Thank you. Like, I appreciate that. She was absolutely right. So you need that kind of feedback. You don't need the feedback that says, this is horrible. I'm going to choose a different coach. This was not helpful in any way. Goodbye. Like, you don't need that feedback. And that was the one we just got for the self-maturity class. It's so funny. It's so whatever. You just let it go. But you got to find that place. You have to find that place in yourself where you can laugh at the negative feedback. Think it and laugh at it and put it away.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what's really helped me, and I'm listening to you, but what has really helped me is understanding that it's part of the territory, isn't it? I mean, it is, as you said, you had that 2 weeks ago. There are clients that, I'm attempting to get big corporate clients. And I think the sales strategy is 7 touch points before you get to that point of sales. You've got to nurture the relationship, have those conversations. Sometimes you're not the right fit. The organization isn't ready. They might not have the budget. You actually thought that you were talking to the person who held the purse strings, but you are not. So it's going to be another few meetings or whatever it is. And I have relationships which I've nurtured for years with people, years, and I am now working with some of them. So I think it's that mindset of it's part of the territory. Also, how can you think about that mindset of building connections and adding value? Because that really helped me when I shifted that to that mindset, and it wasn't all about making the sale, was when I actually sold more. Because when I first started out, I worked with a business coach, and it was fine, but a lot of it was about you've got to up your prices, you've got to be worth this. And each call that you have, the complimentary or chemistry call, had to always be about the sale and not about the coaching. And I remember doing a few of them, and it just didn't feel right in my gut. And I wasn't selling from that because it almost felt as though I was trying to gather people's data to try and force them to buy a product. So I decided, right, I'm going to shift this, and I would just offer 1 hour pure coaching. And lo and behold, people would sign up from that.
That's awesome.
What do you think about that, John?
I mean, corporate executive coaching and the sale of corporate executive coaching, I mean, it feels to me like it's such a feast and famine where you can knock on a door so many times, have so many conversations, and then you reach some point where they'll say, yeah, I think this is great, but I talked to the board or stakeholders and they just want to put a pause button on this right now.
Yes.
And these are people you've never actually met or talked to or done anything with. And you're thinking, well, wait a second, I put 5 appointments in the last 2 months on my calendar, and I met every one of them. And then this is it? Like, what? Oh my goodness. And then other times you have one connection. There was an opportunity. We were going to train, I think, 100 coaches at this education organization. I was giving a talk at NYU. She flew up from Florida to New York to attend it. It went okay. And we were going to meet afterwards. We met afterwards. We had a plan for me to travel, all these things. The pandemic hit, and there goes a $250,000 contract out the door. However, it was just one touch point. And she came to my talk. It was so easy, so seamless, and it would have been a huge boon for the organization. So you don't know. It's hard to predict what is going to come out of any of the marketing effort, the promotional effort that you do. But like what you're saying is, if you can start to find, like exactly what you're saying, Raj, find that perspective of, I'm going to give this value because I want to give value. If you find that perspective and operate from that perspective, you will find your people, and your people will find you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to transition because I love that. You
Cool.
will find your
Let's do it.
people, and people will find you.
Yes.
So I think this is a perfect next question then. I think you kind of line this up for us. What is reframing? I think we've been doing some of that. And how do I use it in a coaching session?
Reframe for me is a shorthand for perspective work. And perspective work can be quite arduous, where you are looking at the perspective, you try to separate the perspective from the topic, and then look at the perspectives in a vacuum and then apply them to different topics and see what happens, right? So to me, perspectives it's like a mechanism, and it's like pulling apart the mechanism and putting it back together and in a different way, but it's somewhat methodical. I really appreciate that though, because what it does, that perspective work, it helps you identify that. It helps you separate the lens from the object that you're looking at. And when you can start to do that, you can start to see patterns in the lens. Often when, humans experience life, in my experience too, the lens and the object are the same. Like, it's hard to make a distinction. It's like, it's hard sometimes to see how your perspective is affecting your view of the object. But when you can start to see that pattern and start to get a sense of your lenses that you're using, the different lenses that you use in the different areas of your life, then you can move to reframe, which to me is just a shorthand, like a lens switch. I think it's most useful if you have already done the perspective work or have done the larger process of the mechanics of switching out lenses and knowing what that feels like and knowing the patterns that that you see in the world. Then that reframe can happen really quickly. And basically, what a reframe is it's switching the lens. And done well, it can be really powerful. Done poorly, it can feel like toxic positivity, where something negative happens and you say, "No, just kidding. This is the best thing ever because," or it can just feel like almost pedantic or demeaning in some way. Like so I feel like reframe is a tool to be used only after you're working with someone who has done perspective work, who has seen and has done the meaningful, deep work of perspective shifts.
What do you think? Do you think it can become a mindset the more work you do on yourself?
Oh, yeah. I think about this sometimes. I think what it comes down to is surrounding yourself with people whose feedback and opinions you genuinely trust and whose feedback and opinions are usually correct. And that's really valuable. Like to have someone who's close to you who can give you feedback. It doesn't always feel good, but it's really useful to have that kind of feedback. So someone can say, "I know you love this. I know this is great. However," that's what you want. That's what you want. And I think at any stage of personal development, we need that. And we need that a lot. And I do not believe that, and I've been in the coach training world for almost 20 years now. I do not believe that there is any point that anyone will ever get to and says, "You know what? I've done my personal development work. I'm good. I'm done. I'm okay. I can move on." I don't think that ever exists, honestly. But I do think you reach certain levels. I think you do reach certain stages I do think there is enough personal development growth that you start to gain a habit of being able to absorb feedback usefully in a way that is, you become anti-fragile. You become almost seeking it. There is an element of confidence in self, knowledge of self. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of who I am because of this work. It becomes, you start to go those places mindfully with someone listening to you for over a decade. Being coached for over a decade, it's a big deal, yeah, I'm curious, right? Your experience too. I'm really curious. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, this is one of my favorite tools, really. When I discovered it, it felt like magic almost. I remember doing like opposite day in 2.0 as well, which was looking at how you look at different perspective, which felt like reframing and looking at things from a different lens. And I was like, wow, because having that power to choose and kind of more control over your life, I think it kind of speaks to that resilience and anti-fragility that you just said as well. And I must use reframing many times a day, if I'm honest with you, many times a week. I'm using it all the time. And I think even in journaling, the question of what's the lesson from this? What was the learning from this? What was the takeaway from this pain or this adversity? Not that I don't think it's important to sit with your emotions. And I like the way you reference toxic positivity. I do think sometimes you got to work through things and move through it. And it's not just a matter of, oh, sunshines and rainbows. Yeah, I actually posted something today on LinkedIn, and my favorite ever quote, and I have to remind myself, is that there's no failure, there's only feedback. So like, when I've lost my businesses and things didn't go great, and there's been all kinds of things that took me in different paths. I mean, I can now look at that and think, well, thank God, because now I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And that is being able to look at what was the lesson and what was the story in that. Yeah, even sometimes on a day to day, if I might be in a bit of a bad mood, or I might be being a bit impatient, or somebody said something, poor hubby, for example, and I'm like, hold on, what's the story I'm telling myself here?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see yourself sometimes. Like, it's hard to see your own personal development. Um, but I think it becomes, there are clues, like when you go back and let's say you go visit family or you go visit old friends and you realize, whoa, like I am very different from who I was just 2 years ago. There are, or taking, establishing a business that grows you so much. You, you have to go face to face with your fears and concerns around money, face to face with your fears and concerns around energy, perspectives, motivation, people in your life, like the challenges of it, dealing with tax forms. I mean, you name it. Like you gotta, you know what I mean? Like it's like, game on. And there has to be a part of you that says, you know what, this game is worth it. This game, I'm doing this for something larger than all of those things. And if that's clear, then that's what was clear for me. And I know that, yeah, my mood's affected by, the ups and downs for sure. But I had to find a way to push the mood aside, or at least use it to find that place of determination. And I spent a lot of time thinking, how can I get from doom and gloom to determination again? And if you can make that pathway consistent, I mean, that's a win. So yeah, it's helpful to talk about these things out loud. Hopefully this helps other coaches in the process.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I know we're on time, and I think it reminds me of Zig Ziglar's work, and he's like, you got to do that daily checkup from the neck up, isn't it? You got to check in with yourself and see where your mindset's at, and you got to put your own oxygen mask on first, because you can't serve from an empty vessel.
I think in I know we have to finish here, but for me, like one of the things that I learned that I think is really useful, and I do think I do sit with it now too, is I think a full 50% of the work of entrepreneuring, of doing this work is your own motivation, self work of how do you stay consistent doing the hard things that you know that you need to do. And if you can, I think most people assume that or take that for granted. Like, of course I'm going to do, of course I'm going to jump in there and hit the ground running every morning. And I think maybe this should take maybe 5 to 10% of my creative energy. But no, like there are times when it takes 50% or more of your energy to just get yourself in the proper space. And I would not discount that. That is, it seems like morning routines, things like that are so valuable. You can't skip them. You gotta find a way to get your space right. One of my favorite things, I know we gotta end here. If you take care of the space, the particles fall into place. We say that a lot in our household.
I like that.
Take care of the space, particles will fall into place.
Thank you, John. I think that's a great note for us to end on. Went quick as always. Thank you.
Super fun. Thank you, community. Thank you for everyone listening to our Q&A sessions. And I'll have some announcements coming up pretty soon of some of the projects, some of the new initiatives that we're putting into place. But bottom line is, we're continuing to persist. So here we are.
I look forward to that. Thank you, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Bye.